Hello, folks. Welcome.
Well, there's your breakfast.
Yeah, it looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, we just finished ours at Brent's, so.
Did you get a smear
Oh,
of?
so that was brunch before the rabbi.
Right.
Hi, Davida.
Hi, how are you?
Terrific. How are you?
Well, I just ran in because my Mashukana husband is 74 and on top of the roof blowing leaves because it's going to rain tomorrow. So I said to him, I have to come in here. It's brunch with the rabbi.
Mhm.
Maybe you should keep your blinds open so you can look for falling bodies.
That's right. Going to run back and forth. Ay, ay, ay. Where does the time fly?
Yeah, truly.
Can't believe it's Sunday and I can't believe he's 74.
Hi, Jerry.
Sounds not on.
How is everybody today?
Beautiful day
Yeah.
before the rains.
Jordan, are we allowed to eat now or we have to wait until after the breakfast?
Well, Stan's already eaten.
Oh, well, it's okay
I
if I have
announced my
coffee.
breakfast.
Is it okay if I might have coffee during the presentation here? Is it against, oh, it's not Shabbos today, so we don't have to
Right.
worry about it.
So you can even have some schnapps.
Yep, I'm going to be right back.
Okay. Are we expecting a large crowd?
What you see is what you get.
We always
You
expect a
never
large
know.
crowd. What we get may not be a large crowd, but we always expect it.
Yep.
So did all our UCLA fans get over the loss the other night?
Not yet.
Not yet.
You better get used to it.
Shouldn't have lost.
You're not going to win them all.
No.
That was only in the days of Coach Wooden. You
I
won
know.
them all.
It's
Right.
easier to
Those
get
days
over
are
it
gone.
after having checked on the latest news in Ukraine.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's another story.
Hi, Bonnie.
I was saying there were at one time there was 1.5 million Jews in Ukraine, and how many are there now, El?
400,000.
400,000. And also she read online that the certain foods that we eat, like latkes and borscht and all that, comes from that part of Ukraine.
Interesting.
Nobody sees.
They were the first one to find that you could mash beets up and make a soup out of it.
Sounds like an act of desperation. And my grandfather was born in well, at the time it was Lemberg, but in Lviv.
Hmm.
And at that time it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Hi, Lise.
Hi.
Morning, Helga. Haven't seen you in a while. How are the pistachios? Still sitting there waiting for Jordan?
The pistachios there.
Barely hear you.
He asked about the pistachios, whether you still have them for Jordan when he comes.
They're ready. The pistachios are ready
Hmm.
and waiting. Hopefully, it won't be too long before we have our meetings.
Right. Good morning, Gladys.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, Gladys.
Good morning.
Morning.
Top middle. And I'm not
Center
mute.
stage.
And I'm not muted.
So if UCLA's out, the only thing to do now is to cheer for St. Peter's.
Yeah.
That would really be a story. It already is, but
Several years ago, Sports Illustrated had an article on what they consider to be the last Cinderella team. And by that, they mean a team that nobody had seen, nobody knew anything about. With ESPN and cable, of course, it's almost impossible not to see a team, although very few people will know about it. But this looks like a Cinderella team.
It will be interesting to see how many Bruins return next year. Almost all of them are eligible.
Yeah, there's an article in the paper today. Well,
Right now I'm trying to keep track of what the Dodgers opening day roster is going to look like.
well, they should be able to score a lot of runs. Now, if the pitching can keep the other team's production down, we'd be good. Did you see the article today about the cable car that they want to run from Union Station to Dodger Stadium?
Not today, but I've heard about it.
Yeah. There's some people complaining they don't want this thing going over their house.
They're saying they can look into their living room,
Right.
those cable cars, as they go by.
When you compare, well, I like to go to baseball games, but they're getting expensive. And everybody has a big screen TV. So you get a better view from home.
Yeah.
The only thing you didn't used to get a better view from at home was when CBS was carrying the NBA playoffs. And they would have this camera that was like up in the rafters in a corner of whatever the arena was. Like this is a view from the worst seat in the house.
I've never forgiven the whole Dodgers thing where they, by empirical domain, the entire neighborhood built a baseball stadium and gave it to a private company who now
Oh yeah,
$30.
that's
I've never forgiven them for that.
well. They were going to originally they were going to condemn the area anyway, because in the early 50s they were thinking of basically building public housing projects. And then by the mid to late 50s or mid 50s, at least, public housing was growing out of favor, at least in Southern California. But it's the same thing that O'Malley tried in New York. It's not that Robert Moses wouldn't let him build a park where he wanted. It's that Robert Moses would not condemn the area where O'Malley wanted to build the park. And, O'Malley, what do you mean I'm going to pay a fair price for something? What are you, crazy?
You think I should call Esther and see where she is?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Hello, everybody who just came on. Hi, Alan. Welcome. Hi, Judy. Hi, Phyllis. Hi, Claire. Good to see all of you.
Hi, Karate.
So I guess you all heard the Rams are moving next door.
Yes.
Oh, there's Esther. Okay, Gladys, I think we got Esther.
Is she? I'm just.
Hi, Esther.
Hi. Oh, hi, everybody.
Hi, that's your mom calling on the other phone.
Oh,
Esther,
she is?
I just hung up. That was you may call.
Okay. Okay. I'm not even late.
No, good to have you, Esther. So let's give it one more minute so people can finish chewing if they are. And then in the meantime, I want to introduce to you my background. The family that Bonnie and I were in a Chavurah with included, so we've been in a study Chavurah for almost 30 years. And one of the families, the young man who grew up in that family, decided that he wanted to go into the restaurant business. And so he opened up a deli called Wexler's Deli. And it went really, really well. And he opened up another Wexler's Deli and then a third one. But then times changed. The downtown deli ended up being affected by the congestion and the changing of directions of the traffic, and the one in Santa Monica and the one in Palm Springs all had some issues. And so he ended up selling out his portion and his name. But this is all from Wexler's Deli. This is the way he wanted to prepare his wonderful bagel lox and cream cheese, which Bonnie and I had, and it was delicious. But I hope all of you had a good brunch. I want to thank the people who put this all together, although I don't think that we've had a chance to have them join us yet. So Sheila Hart and Shirley Dollins are perhaps going to be joining us, but if not, I see the Kirschbaums are here all the way from Arizona. Hi.
And the Kirschbaum's son. It's Mark, huh?
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Okay.
They're
Well,
off to a game. Oh, sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
Here, say hello and goodbye.
Enjoy the game, Mark.
Mark. All right. Here. Say hello.
Hi, Richard. You off to the game?
Off to the game.
Okay. Enjoy the game. You look sharp, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I love the shirt.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
All right, well, why don't we begin? So I am delighted to have Esther join us. Esther and I go back to when she was a teenager, and we have moved into kind of different parts of the world. But right now she's in Jerusalem. I believe there's a 10-hour difference between Jerusalem and here, right, Esther? So by way of introducing Esther, I'm going to ask Esther's grandmother, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask Esther's mother, Gladys, to please share with us what you would like us to know about Esther.
Well, I've always been fascinated of how anybody could raise 10 children in a 3-bedroom apartment and not go out of her mind, and how one works about getting a family of 12 around the dinner table. It coordinates, food and sleep and all the carpools. Well, I guess they don't have carpools, but school hours, and it was overwhelming with 4 children in a 5-bedroom house. I don't know how she did it. That's one of the things I've always admired and I've been curious about.
Hey, sweetie.
Thank you. So we are going to learn a lot more about Esther. Quite frankly, as I think back on this, Esther is the first Haredi person I've ever talked to. So Esther, I want to make sure that I'm properly defining you. So when I use the word Haredi, compared to Orthodox, maybe before you let us know in what aspect of the definition you fit in, can you kind of tell us what you understand to be some of the differences between Haredi and Orthodox?
Both Haredim and Orthodox are convinced absolutely that there is a God and that he told us how he wants to live, and that in keeping mitzvahs or doing his will. Haredim put more of an emphasis on Torah and are less interested in the more materialistic aspects of life, ideally.
So in your life, how has that been expressed, the difference between the two?
Well, I live in a building of large families and small apartments. And the children go to schools where the secular subjects are very minimal. My kids went to a slightly more open than average, but many Haredim don't have math past basic fractions. Haredi boys, the girls get a different education, and their general secular learning is much more centered around Torah and Judaism and Israel. And much less exposed to the general world.
Thank you. In terms of practice, which is what Gladys your mom had raised, and which I'm particularly fascinated by, is how large families maneuver around their Judaism and their community. And I wonder if you can take us back to when your family was at its largest. right now you have 10 children, you have 8 boys and 2 girls, and you've got 17 grandchildren. But before we get to when the grandchildren emerged, go back to when your family was large, you were a bit younger, and you had to move around the city. How did you do that?
Wow. Okay, so in Israel at that time, many less people had cars. So everything is much more central. There's a little grocery store across the street. The kids can walk to school. The city is built, or was more built on the assumption that people didn't have cars and the families had to get essential services in their neighborhood. So we have a complete medical clinic like a minute away from my house. It has x-rays and ultrasounds and everything you need. Basically, it has nursing care. So the city is set up for large families on small budgets. Besides it, I have some friends who have smaller families. I even have a friend who only ended up having 1 child after 21 years. And her time was just as fully taken up with that 1 child as mine was with all 10. In a large family, the kids learn to get along and to help, and they have less demands. And you do the best you can. It's an organic group. My daughter made a bar mitzvah yesterday. So she had like 30 people for the meals. And when she collapsed on Shabbos afternoon, her kids took the little ones to the park. And that was expected. Of course, they helped carry everything to the kiddush and cleaned up afterwards. They had a sense of responsibility as they know they're part of a bigger group, and they mature more quickly because of it. And the kids help out a lot more than American kids are used to.
So tell us about, Esther, I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
No.
Tell us about that exhaustion level that you talked about and how it affects your presenting meals and activities for the kids and all of that.
Wow, it was exhausting. My kids are from the oldest to the youngest is a 20-year span. And by the end of that, I hadn't slept a single full night in 22 or 23 years. And I was exhausted, but so was everybody. So we're exhausted. I gotta say the newer generation is very different, that the husbands are much more helpful. My children, my sons and my son-in-law are much more helpful than my husband and all my neighbors ever were.
Do you have,
Also, because we live in a building, it's much more, where my mother lives, the houses are very spread apart and you don't know your neighbors very, very well. Whereas if you live in a building and everybody has a whole lot of kids and everybody's hanging out in the lobby and riding bikes and kicking balls all afternoon, you're there much more for each other, which was an enormous help. Whenever you had something special, you had a baby, you had a simcha, you just weren't feeling well, your neighbors would send supper and they would take your kids to play. And if you wanted to daven on Rosh Hashanah, you'd arrange schedules so that you had a turn and somebody else had a turn. It made a big difference being amongst other large families.
Is there a division of labor that men and women kind of assume certain responsibilities around the family? And so, like in terms of setting up and cleaning up and preparing a meal, say for Shabbat, that the women had a lot of that responsibility and the men had other responsibilities, especially if maybe the men would go off to shul for Mariv on Friday night and the women are behind getting everything ready for when they all return. And I think especially given the fact that he only had 2 daughters who could help you, apparently, and you had 8 boys and a husband who, did they pull their weight, or did you find that you were having to do a lot of that work?
Personally, I made a big mistake. I had a son who's got Asperger's, so he wasn't like tuned in to what needed to be done. And then I had this only daughter. So it didn't seem fair that she should have to do an enormous amount of the work. In retrospect, I should have trained the boys to help more. And I see in my children's families that their children are much, much more in tune in terms of helping. And again, I see in their generation that the men are much more in tune with helping. And also because so many of the women are working, it's a different generation. And my generation, the women mostly stayed home with the kids. Now that all the women are working, I see the responsibilities are very fairly split. A lot of times the men take the kids to Gan. A lot of the men like to do the cooking. I know a lot of my kids just put up a list of a menu of what we're going to make in this Shabbos. And whoever has time goes to the kitchen and makes it. They're both equally competent. They're both equally good with the kids.
Esther
Things
has
have changed.
one live-at-home son who's competent in the kitchen and helpful. Abraham.
Well, there's Abraham, but Tadros can cook anything, and Yehuda likes to cook, and Yaakov cooks a lot. Our kids, Shmuley cooks.
What language do you speak at home?
We speak English.
Right. In the
very few of
community?
my-
And in the community, what do they speak?
In our building, most of the kids speak English. Everybody in our building, the architect is from Chicago, and he lived here, and so he chose families that all had a Chicago connection. Everybody in our building speaks English. Of my children, there's only two families that are still speaking English so far.
You were raised in a very different environment. I wonder how your upbringing compares to others of your age in your Haredi community, where you might have been exposed to a certain Jewish lifestyle, and how does that translate to now adapting to a Haredi lifestyle?
It's true. I was raised very differently from most of my neighbors. I went off to what you might call a Haredi finishing school for a couple of years, and that did a lot to help me integrate into the Orthodox community, which is what I really wanted. I have other friends who didn't go that route. Some of them live in communities where they feel very much on the outskirts. They feel a little out of things, a little disrespected. I married a man who grew up Haredi, which makes a difference. On the other hand, I've got Baal Tshuva friends who who raised their families in more Baal Tshuva environments. It's a decision people make for themselves, how much they want to integrate, how much they don't.
Do you feel that there was in yourself any kind of a conflict between the way you were raised and the life that you then chose to live? Is there any residual, gee, I wish I could have done this, or said this, or participated more in that?
That's a big question, actually. My kids' schools, and especially the girls' schools, put an enormous emphasis on unity and friendliness and mutual support. Both the boys and the girls, they put a lot of emphasis on values education. And my school didn't have that. And I think it was really missing. I was really sorry that we didn't have that and that American kids aren't getting that now. My school was full of bullies. I wasn't popular. I suffered a lot for being different. On the other hand, the basic values with which I grew up in the home are basic Jewish values: concern for others and giving and learning Torah and
Is there a difference in the education that boys get compared to girls?
Well, yeah. The girls get a much better secular education, partly because the boys have a mitzvah of learning Torah, so they put a much stronger emphasis on it. And the girls' schools put more of an emphasis on this mutual respect than the boys, although the boys also do much more than they do in America. Respect for elders, friends.
Are there kids in your community over the years that have left the Haredi community, and were they able to assimilate into the general community?
Nobody of my, I've got a friend who has two kids who don't keep Shabbos anymore. They've assimilated okay into their communities. It's not nearly as common here as I guess it is in America. I hear that in America, it's like 10% go, leave Torah. Although I do hear that a lot of them come back within about 10 years. Here it's much less prevalent. Of my friend who has two children who are off, one of them has mental health issues. Really, I don't know very many kids here who stopped keeping Shabbos. There's
a strong separation of sexes in your community. How does that affect you? Did you ever want to participate in a conversation with men? Did you ever want to study something that, or share some thoughts, or sing along in a community of mixed people?
I can't say that I did. In terms of things to study, now that we've got internet, you can study anything you want as much as you want. And I also, I spent many years getting an advanced Jewish education. So I got, and I have the textual skills to study anything I want on myself. I'm not missing anything in those terms. And when I do come across a subject that's out of my depth, I have my husband and sons who, are well versed and can help me. Have I ever minded not being able to take place with the men? No, really not. We have very full lives, even though they are a little different. I guess it might be different if you were single, but if you have a husband and children and a place in the community, and you have to make a point, it's not a problem. Have I ever wanted to and not been able to? No. We have a neighbor, we have a shul in our lobby, and we have one female neighbor who doesn't like it because when she goes in and out, she has to walk through all the men davening. It bothers her. Well, so her husband spoke for her in that case. If she'd been a single woman, what should she have done? She would have gone to a neighbor and talked to him privately instead of standing up in shul and making an announcement. I don't find it. Occasionally you need to do a workaround, but not very often. It's not very hard.
So if you're sitting around, say, a Shabbat dinner table and there are men and women there, which first I'm assuming there are men and women sitting around the Shabbat dinner table.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like, well, I can't say that, that's not a woman's place?
No, can't say that.
So you feel very comfortable expressing yourself, even in mixed company?
Yeah, completely. I don't even know anybody who doesn't.
Do you ever socialize in mixed company, or is everything, what is social life like in the Haredi community?
I don't know what it's like in America. In Israel, we don't have Sunday off. There's very little socializing, even in the same sex. Obviously, my husband's friends are in his minyan and in his yeshiva. Women's friends, tend to be around work and neighbors, I guess, just like everybody all over the world. There is not a lot of time to socialize. There's very little time for barbecues, and people have large families. There's no going out to the theater. There's not very much going to museums. There's just not very much time for that. That's Israeli society is very different that way.
Well, you certainly have a very large family. You've got 17 grandchildren. How do the cousins get along or get together?
That's very nice. We were very lucky because this summer, absolutely all my married kids went to my mother, which was great. And the kids got to know each other. But other than that, we're also lucky with this. We have a guest room and we have a mother-in-law next door with a guest room. So I can have 2, even maybe 3 married kids over at a time. So on Shabbat, when everybody's here for 26, 27 hours, the kids get to know each other, the cousins. And also my married kids will go to other married kids. And even my unmarried kids will go to my married kids. They get to know each other pretty well. And we had a bar mitzvah, so everybody was together at once. That's most of the socializing is.
Yesterday, the bar mitzvah of Esther's oldest grandson.
Oh, Mazel Tov! Wow.
Thank you.
So Esther, with so many Jewish and non-Jewish life cycle events, how does a family divide up so that all of them get attended to? You may have a Pidyon Ben the same morning you have a bris that is a bar mitzvah, and how do you end up getting to all of them?
Sometimes that happens. You do your best.
You make do. There was a very interesting article in the Hadassah magazine. I don't know how many of you get this, but it was all about 50 years of women in the rabbinate. And it talked about an Orthodox woman who studied to become a rabbi in Efrat. And the one of the regrets that she said in the article was interesting. She said that it saddens me that women are not counted in the minyan, but I bend my wishes to halacha. Is there anything that saddens you right now about Haredi life and your role in it and stuff that you wish maybe you could do?
Order in takeout for Shabbos. But other than that, I can't say I do. One of the tenets of Haredi life is that God did tell us how He wants us to live our lives, and it sinks in over time that this is what He wants you to be doing at this moment. And there's lots and lots of amazing role models among people I know well, people who've had very tough situations, and they really, you see that they work. You can grow yourself to understand that this is what God wants of me right now. I've got a friend whose husband was murdered in a terror attack, and I've got, friends with children with horrible needs, and I know somebody whose 38-year-old husband just had a stroke. No life no life lacks challenges, but when you work on yourself to understand that this is what God wants of me right now, it's hard to take it badly. I may not, it's a pain when your kid throws up and you've got to change 3 sets of sheets, but that's what you're supposed to be doing at that moment. So you'd rather be doing other things, but it's okay. It's not terrible.
Thank you, Esther. I've had a chance to ask a lot of questions, but I'm sure that there are people who are viewing who also have some curiosity they'd like to express. And so if you would like to ask Esther a question, please make sure you express it respectfully and articulately so that she can hear. She's pretty far away. Phyllis.
How do you envision your retirement years?
Let's see, I'm 59. My husband's been learning in yeshiva ever since he was a child, and he intends to keep doing that. There's people in his yeshiva who are in their 80s and 90s, so his life isn't going to change any. And well, I don't know. I only started working 10 years ago when my baby was 5 or 6. So my career is just like getting off the ground. I don't even want to retire now. I love my career. Very fortunate that way. There isn't, most of the people who retire here, the men sit and study, and most of the women are quite busy with their families and grandchildren, as busy as they want to be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stan Schroeder.
Yes, Esther, Gladys sent this brief bio, and one of the things she said is that you played the alto sax in a women's orchestra, and it touched me, of course, because I played the alto sax in the UCLA band, but in a much different environment. Our first question is, how did you come attracted to the alto sax, and what did it mean to you to be able to do it?
Well, I started playing, my mother made us all take music lessons when we were 10.
Oh, well, it started a lot earlier than that.
Oh, so I just kept it up for a long time. I think everybody in the orchestra did, a lot of Russians.
So you had started playing earlier when you were a teenager, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The second question I had was, though, to me, the two basic most change in lifestyle is one, the arranged marriage concept of very little contact between younger men and younger boys and girls outside their family, and how that affects the whole culture. And the second is, maybe based on that, the separation of the culture that you've chosen from the rest of the Israeli culture, and how that affects you or those that you know that are not part of the culture.
Okay. I guess first things first. The arranged marriages. So the Hasidim actually have a concept. They just meet for like 15 minutes or a half an hour, which means that really the parents are choosing the spouse. I don't know how they do that, honestly. I would never have the confidence to choose my child's marriage partner. We went out, in my circles, you go out 7 times or 9 times for 3-4 hours at a time. So you kind of know the person. There's a few things about this. One is that I look around and I see my nephews, say, get in a relationship and spend endless hours with a girl that they're attracted to, and they go on camping trips and many, and they meet each other's families, and then they break up after they get to know each other better. I think that must be emotionally excruciating. Not only during the breakup, but even the whole time that they're together, not having the confidence that this is a marriage and we're going to make this work. Another point is that the Talmud says that 40 days before a fetus is conceived, God announces that this man is going to marry this woman and this is a match. So I feel in the Orthodox world, the divorce word isn't always hanging in the background as an option. It is an option, but you go into marriage saying, as much as I know this person, we can make this work. I know him well enough to know that I can make this work, which is basically true. You spend enough time to know with him, and your parents have checked out enough to know that you could make this work. And then you go into marriage prepared to do the work that it takes to make a marriage last. And there's a confidence that comes of not worrying that things are going to fall apart. There's a confidence that comes from knowing that he's not going to be attracted to the neighbor because he's not going to socialize with her. I think whatever drawbacks you may or may not have from a very short courtship are more than made up for in the stability of the marriages.
Thank you.
Your other question was integrating with Israeli society. So I live in Jerusalem, where at least 60% of the population is Haredi, and almost everybody keeps Shabbos. So there's not very much trouble integrating here. And even when you go to Tel Aviv, a Jew is certainly not an oddity. A religious Jew is not an oddity anywhere in Israel. The whole country is very beautifully set up. Even the banks have, posters on the wall explaining how they can charge interest and, the halachic obligation of charging interest. The country is beautifully set up to live a Haredi lifestyle. And what I gather from America is that most Haredi Jews in America also live in very well-established communities where integration into society isn't a big problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gladys, I saw your hand.
Oh, this is a long, Esther said her career, and I thought maybe people would be interested in knowing what her career was. Stan brought up the orchestra, but there were other things she does, and maybe she would want to tell us what she does for a living.
I write for an Orthodox weekly magazine called Mishpacha, and I translate from Hebrew to English, and I edit and proofread, mostly edit, for Art Scroll and also for private individuals. That's what I do. I like it.
Very nice. Thank you. Davida.
Well, first of all, I just want to say it's such to see Esther, because I don't know if she even remembers me, but we went to school together, and Hebrew school and Sunday school, and to see always her family in the front row with all of them there is such a mahaya. And so to see you, it is just such a lovely thing. And all of your children and grandchildren, I mean, it's just amazing. And I just respect you so much, so much. And the thing is that what you were saying, it's not because I'm not Orthodox, but what you were saying, God always laughs at people who make plans, because like you were saying, God has a plan for you and he knows what you're supposed to do. And if your kid throws up on the sheets, well, maybe it's a mitzvah because it will have you cleaned out so you're not someplace else that you shouldn't be and something bad would happen. So I just, I think about those things that, many times I'm sure all of us like, what did this happen? And then you have to stop and breathe. Breathing, of course, is the most important thing to realize that, God is sending you a message. So I'm just enjoying looking at your punim and thinking of all the wonderful things that you're doing. And of course, your mother, Gladys, is, she's amazing. So I'm just enjoying everything.
And she is. Thank you.
Thank you, Davida. Thank you. Abani.
Esther, we met you 45 years ago. And so you were, I guess, about 14. And I don't remember if you were one of the first girls to have a bat mitzvah on a Friday night. I don't remember if that happened, but you blew the shofar. And women didn't blow the shofar at Temple Beth Ami in those days. And I always think of you as, well, doing what you feel you can do. And so when I don't know if I have a question other than I see you tackling your life now and as it's been going on with dignity and with conviction and with what you know is right for you and your family and your heart. And I think you did that a long time ago. And so I think that, and actually, I mean, I think I see Gladys in that way too, that she does what she feels is important to her and what's right for her. So I think that you have come into the Haredi community with that same tenacity and raising your children. And I loved what you said about not really having grown up in the public schools with the kindness to fellow person. And I think about David teaching at D. Toledo High School, where A+ human being and kindness is so important. So I think that American schools have a lot to learn with trying to perpetuate that kind of feeling. So I guess I didn't have a question, but I just, I think that you are now what you were as a young girl, and it's lovely. It really is lovely.
Thank you very much. Thank
you, Bonnie. Who else has a question or a thought? Gladys.
I just wanted to say when Esther one time told, Esther one time, when I was upset that she became Haredi, when she became Orthodox, we were upset about it because we saw sort of an end to our lifestyle in her. And then she said to me that I was more religious than my mother was, and she was following in my footsteps, being more religious.
Very good. Esther, is there a relationship between Hasidism and Haredism? I know the communities are different, but is there ever an assimilation of the two, a sharing of holidays, of neighborhoods?
Yeah, there's total sharing of neighborhoods. Well, in the time of the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon, obviously there was an enormous split between Haredim and Hasidim. But over time, they've really grown together in that everybody learns everybody else's big rabbis. Obviously, you go to where you're more drawn. It's not horrible if somebody goes from a Hasidic community to a yeshivish community. And most of the Hasidim are very yeshivish. There's not a huge amount of difference anymore between the two.
I understood there was an intermarriage conflict from time to time. Haredi marrying a Hasid. I remember your nursery school teacher one time was a problem.
Oh yeah.
Nursery school.
Yeah, I remember her. Listen, many families, children have to find their own way. Children have to make their own statement. Not every child can say, this is what my father did, and I'm going to go forward in his path. Many people have to say, that was him, and I'm differentiating myself. So I have kids who did that and kids who did that. Me, it doesn't bother at all because, I took where my parents were and I moved in a separate direction also. My husband, who went exactly in the path of his father, it does bother. So we have kids who are have lives exactly like ours. We have kids who do it differently. And it does bother my husband. Some people are bothered by it and some people aren't.
I'll call you in a second. I just wanted to ask this one question before I forget. Esther, I was going to ask you if you ever saw the series Shtisel, but I would imagine
I've heard about it.
You don't watch TV, but yeah. So,
I don't watch TV, but my dentist does, and he's told me all about it.
So I wonder how much of the news of the world gets to you, in the sense that you find out about something that has already passed and you think, oh my God, I knew nothing about this. Did that really happen? Does that happen very much?
Okay, so I have internet. So every morning, first thing in the morning, I check the Wall Street Journal and Arutz Sheva and Yeshiva World News.
All
My
right.
kids who don't have internet, there's a phone line and they phone it every morning and they get the news headlines. There are Orthodox newspapers that are delivered free to the door every once a week. There's newspapers you can buy, Orthodox newspapers. Everybody finds out as much news as they want to.
Good. Thank you. Lou.
Yeah, hi, very interesting. This is great. This is really wonderful. What if for a lot of us, and myself especially, can you maybe explain to us the difference between the Hasidic and the Haredi communities and maybe even some of the thinking so we can differentiate the two?
Okay, so way back when it started, about 250 years ago, there was the Baal Shem Tov who said that Judaism is becoming too strictured and too in the box, and too cold. And people need something that speaks to their hearts. We need more singing, and we also need more exposure to the esoteric concepts of Judaism, like Kabbalah. Not everybody's got a Gemara head that they can find real fulfillment in working out the details of a legal argument. Some people need something more emotional or something that speaks to the emotions. Some people needed something different. So he started a movement of people who gave Judaism over to people who were feeling excluded from the very much colder and more rational form of Judaism, which had been the standard until then. And that, of course, developed. But over time, what we began to see was yeshivish, Haredi, non-Hasidic, were reading what the Hasidic rabbis were writing, and the rabbis were speaking over things that they'd heard from the non-Hasidic. Such that today, well, I teach school. I teach essay writing to college, to undergrads in an Orthodox Jewish girls' school here. When they write their papers, they will cite just as readily from regular, from Hasidic rabbis and from yeshivish Haredi rabbis. It's become a total mix. My Rebbe's Rebbe was Rabbi Eliyahu Eliezer Dessler, and his books are full of references to Hasidic thought, which is more esoteric and more Kabbalistic. And the Hasidim, who originally started off looking for a warmer form of Judaism that was less dependent on learning, because not everybody, life was very hard in Europe then, not everybody had the time or the head to become educated. They're putting more and more emphasis on learning Torah. They've also come. It's not much difference anymore. 100 years ago, if you were in one yeshiva, yeshivish or Hasidic, you would be expected to dress just like everybody else in the yeshiva. That's not the case any longer. My husband learns in the Mir Yeshiva, which is, I think, the world's biggest yeshiva, and they have rooms where the Hasidim learn and rooms where the yeshivish learn. There's really no difference anymore. Very little difference.
Thank you.
Well,
Mention
the dress
that your husband Gabriel was from Australia, and so both of you came from communities outside of Israel and ended up in Jerusalem. Stan Schroeder.
Yes, I got introduced to some people at Aish Torah, and I was wondering how, and I've been to Israel many, many times and often go to Aish. But can you tell me from your, community and whatever, a relationship to Aish, or how do you have any relationship?
Aish is another yeshiva. It's geared for Balei Tshuva, people who are coming in without a lot of background. The people who lead it are, some of them are friends of ours. I've just finished editing a book for somebody whose husband teaches there. It's a normal part of the Haredi landscape. There's a great deal of respect for the people.
Good. Bonnie.
Two questions. The first is, I think you mentioned that two of your children continue to speak English in the home. Do the other families speak Yiddish or Hebrew?
Hebrew. My family didn't learn Yiddish. None of my kids speak Yiddish yet. I mean, they speak a little, they understand, but they don't speak it.
Okay. And then the second question is, I think that I remember when you went to a girls' yeshiva and you were studying. And I was wondering what led you to that path. Yes, what was your path to go there? And then I think that from learning there, it took you to where you are today, I'm guessing.
So my journey went through several schools. I had a summer in Los Angeles where I had nothing to do. And Yeshiva University of Los Angeles had some summer programs. So I went there to study just because I had nothing else to do. And then after a year of taking courses with them, I went off to Neve Yerushalayim, which is a girls' college for girls with not so much background. And then I went to a school in England for 2 years because I wanted to learn to integrate into the Orthodox community. And because that was the deepest level of learning I was capable of at that time. And then I went to another school for another 3 years, which was for Israeli girls who were on a much higher standard of learning, because I really wanted to be able to learn. I wanted to advance my text skills and my background knowledge.
And so that led you to wanting to live that kind of a life.
Well, I already wanted to live that kind of life. And that's why I went to those schools.
Thank you. Phyllis.
How did you meet your husband, who was from Australia, and you were from California?
We were both here in Jerusalem, and my Rabi sent one of his students to find me somebody to marry. And it worked.
Seemed to have worked.
It worked very well.
One of the many success stories. Any last questions before we let Esther go to bed? Gladys.
I noticed that when you married Gavi, there was some resistance on his family's part because you were about tshuva. They weren't quite sure about it. They weren't even sure I was Jewish at all. And I was wondering, I realize that has disappeared, but is that attitude still there for about tshuva?
Yes, but we'd be talking older generation. We'd be talking people who grew up in Europe. I don't think that people who grew up in America have any. That's not true. There is some resistance to marrying into Balei Tshuva among some families. When they started Neve Yerushalayim, which is a college where Jewish women go when they're interested in becoming more religious, or at least checking it out, America's biggest person, Reb Moshe Feinstein, says, keep it very quiet, he says, because people are going to be shocked at how many people in their community are Balei Tshuva. So back then in 1980, the Orthodox were shocked and hesitant about accepting Balei Tshuva. But in the 40 years since then, that's gone way down. They estimate that about 30% of any Orthodox community in America now is Balei Tshuva.
Thank you. Any other, Davida? And then Judy.
I just want to ask, because I didn't realize that Esther blew the shofar. I guess I'm lucky she's not here. She'd be my major competition. But my question is, because when my Hasidic friends know that I blow the shofar, they go, women don't blow the shofar. So my question to you, you don't blow the shofar anymore. Do you think it's not right to have a woman blow the shofar?
There are halachic reasons that a man should be blowing the shofar. Yeah. I realize sometimes it's difficult when we have a skill not to be able to use it or to show it off. But, there's a lot of trade-offs in life. I remember my mother still telling me that when the church is always filled up with women and then the men leave, that there are sometimes trade-offs to letting everybody do everything they're capable of. Sometimes it's right for a person to take a back seat in a marriage or in a community. And it's something that a person does willingly and has, is a worthwhile trade-off, sacrifice, whatever.
Judy.
Hi, Esther. I was a friend of your brother Elliot of blessed memory, so it's nice to meet you. I have a question about everything you described is completely family oriented, which of course most religious communities focus on, and most people are married and have children and grandchildren. But I'm just curious, surely there's a tiny slice of the population that doesn't marry, does get divorced, is widowed, young, maybe even without children. How do those people fit into that community? It seems like it would be impossible.
It's very difficult and very painful. And there are a lot of organizations growing to help address their needs. Single women who get together on a regular basis, and widowed and divorced parents. It's very difficult. And there is a mitzvah not only to get married, but to be married, so that even somebody who's widowed is looking to get married again. It's true, life is built around the family. It's difficult and painful. Sure.
Thank you. Fascinating question, Judy. Bonnie.
Yeah, Esther, you know, when you were talking about the fact that the sons seem to have a more active role in cooking, in taking care of the children, than you brought them up in that way as they've gotten married. And I have to tell you, it works the same here. Benji does all the cooking in the house, and Ehud, our son-in-law, he does a lot of the cooking, and there's a lot more division of taking care of the children between the two people, the two spouses, who quite often both of them are working. So it's interesting that you see that trend in your community, but it's happening in the greater American community as well, and I'm guessing all over the world. So I don't know whether it's that age group where our grandchildren all make their own lunches. I made lunch. I'm still making lunch for David when he goes to work. But he is capable. He is capable. But
next year I'm making my own lunch.
Right. No, you do. But I see a lot of difference. And our daughter and daughter-in-law both say the kids have to learn how to do these things. They have to learn how to do their own laundry. I mean, my mother did everything in the house, so I did everything that she did, which was the laundry, the cooking, everything else. But it's nice to know that trend is going on in your community as well.
Yeah.
Well, my son Benji's son Evan is, as we are speaking, flying to Israel. He is en route for a week or so, and Esther, I'll ask you to look out for him. He may be meandering through the streets of Jerusalem at some point. But I want to thank you, Esther. This has been a very illuminating and insightful introduction to life within the Haredi community, a world that does not touch most of us, but you have touched us with your honesty and your love of Judaism and family and community. And I thank you so much for giving of your time to be able to share your thoughts. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to take just one moment. Thank you very much for all your questions. One moment to thank my mother for not only bringing me up, but also letting me go free, which is not easy, and I appreciate it. Okay.
That's my youngest granddaughter back there.
Hi. We won't ask you if you know her name, Gladys.
Naomi.
That's wonderful. Well, I thank all of you for being a part of this, and I look forward to your being at the Tish a week from next Thursday night. I'll be at camp for next Shabbat, so I will see you a week after that. And again, to Esther and to all who put our program together, thank you and goodbye, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody. Nice to meet everybody. Bye-bye.
You too.
Phyllis, you're muted.
Okay. Rabbi, when will this be available as a recording?
Probably in about 2 hours. And all you have to do, just go on YouTube. It'll be on our YouTube channel. I just have to rename it, but right now it probably says Contemporary Service, but you'll see it there on our YouTube channel.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right.
All right.
Okay.
Gladys, this
Thank
was
you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Gladys, thank you for sharing
was
your
wonderful.
daughter with us.
I was very proud of her.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank
Shavuot
you,
Tov.
Gladys. Thank
It was a wonderful, wonderful learning experience.
I have to tell you this, when she was getting married, they had an Ufrufen. So we went to the Ufrufen and I'm sitting in shul there. And then they stand up to daven and I stand up and I'm davening. And I hear her mother say I hear Gabrielle's mother saying to her mother, "Oh, look, she is Jewish."
So all it takes is a few shekels and they see the Judaism.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good day.
Have a good day, everybody.
Very nice.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Shavuot Tov, everyone.
Thank you,
Shavuot Tov.
Gladys.
Shavuot
Thank you,
Tov.
Rabbi. That was wonderful.
Thank
I'd
you.
say go Bruins, but they've already gone.
St. Mary's.
Sure.
Go
We're
We can
gonna
say
have-
go Dodgers. We can say go Dodgers.
Get
Everybody
ready
gets
for
believe-
football season. Go.
Yeah.
But for the
I
first,
don't-
but Stan, for the first 10 minutes of that game, it was the best basketball game you've seen in a long, long time. Up and down, no fouls. They just played. That was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't feel from the very beginning that they had any rhythm to their game. They were the problem was that they would take advantage of a situation, but they didn't know to be able to create for themselves. So it's the way it goes.
That's the game, but
No, but it was real basketball, not
for that first 10 minutes
going on the
the
three
up and
pointers.
down, with no fouls. They just played and matched each other. For the first 10 minutes, it was a great game. But once the fouls started and it became basketball again, and listen, I'm sure that North Carolina felt that they didn't play as well as they should have either. But
Until the very end, the guy was just
I'm looking forward to today when the St. Peter's plays North Carolina. I finally have a team in the NC2A to root for, so I'm excited about them. They're recruiting. That coach's recruiting budget at St. Peter's, I read, is $28,000 a year. To USC or UCLA, that would be a drop in the bucket for recruiting, but their sweats don't match. I mean, they're on a shoestring, and these guys are in the semifinals of the regionals. Now, I can tell you, we got to root for them.
Lou, do you know where all those ball T-shirts that the players are wearing, how that whole thing started?
Where what?
The T-shirts that all the players that say ball on them. Have you seen the players when they're warming up, or the ones on the bench? And a lot of the people in the stands, for that matter, have some T-shirt that says ball in big letters and then something else that I'm not sure where it came
No,
from.
I don't think
Okay. I'll look it up.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't recall that, but anyway, we have a dog in the fight now, so that's good.
Okay.
You have a bird in the fight.
All right.